All right. Pretty bad news from the UK. Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, was not only taken to the hospital, but he has now been moved to the intensive care unit. That means his situation is very serious. In fact, they're talking about what needs to happen if he is no longer conscious, and who would be making the decisions in the United Kingdom. So this is a very, very, very serious story. Told you earlier that Boris Johnson tested positive for coronavirus. I did a video about that last week, and one of my points was that unfortunately it shouldn't work like this, but it does when people who are quote unquote celebrities, whether they're political celebrities or from the movies or entertainment field, people react to it more. They take it more seriously. Like, oh, wait a minute, I know Boris Johnson. Oh, wow, he got sick. I know Chris Cuomo. Oh, wow, he got sick. So it must be real, right? So, well, it just got more real. So, look, the cases, as you know, a couple of days ago passed over 1 million cases throughout the world. And that is massively undercounting it because there are no tests in so many parts of the world. God knows how many cases there are in India right now, and I fear for that country greatly for what could happen there. So, but what we do know is it's raging right now. The in America we've got stay at home orders. Believe it or not, not across the whole country. Again, thanks to the incompetence of Donald Trump. Of course, it should be across the country. We have obstinate governors in places like Iowa going, I don't see no coronavirus. She did not. They did not specifically say that. But they have not issued a stay-at-home order and appear to be minimizing it in their language, okay, and how they speak about it, which is a disaster in the making. If it wasn't clear to them through all these millions of cases in America, we today very likely passed 10,000 deaths. We are way past 300,000 cases. Apparently, none of that woke them up, but maybe this will wake them up. So first, Boris Johnson gets taken to the hospital, and at that point, very British, and to be fair to them, they're trying to keep people calm, and that's a good instinct. And so I appreciate it in a sense, but I didn't believe a word of it when they very calmly said, "Oh, we're moving him to the hospital, but it's no big deal." No, you didn't want to move him to the hospital. He's actually been positive for quite some time on coronavirus. Optically, that's not a. You're worried, and which is a good instinct on your part. You're worried about whether that'll panic people in the UK. But so it was not an easy move for you to make. That's my analysis of the situation. So at the time, Boris Johnson's account tweets out in presumably his language. He says that he's going to the hospital for, quote, some routine tests as I'm still experiencing coronavirus symptoms. I see that and I think, it ain't routine tests, okay? And then he says, I'm in good spirits, keeping in touch with my team as we work together to fight this virus and keep everyone safe. Good. It's not like a Trumpian message where, I know coronavirus better than anyone. Oh my God, the earth is falling. No, it's not. No, or the sky's falling. No, it's not. Everything's great. Go back to the markets. None of that. It's a good, nothing wrong with it. And we're trying to, and I hope that he's okay. We've said that 1,000 times. So far, I was at that point just worried, right? Like they're not moving him to the hospital because he's doing great. They're moving him to the hospital because he's not doing well. Then just a little while ago, news breaks. Yes, they moved him to ICU. He's in trouble. Okay. To give you a sense of how much trouble, let me give you a couple of quotes that they put out. A spokesperson for the Prime Minister said, over the course of this afternoon, the condition of the Prime Minister has worsened. And on the advice of his medical team, he has been moved to the intensive care unit at the hospital. So that's already really bad. And that doesn't mean he's going to die, guys. A lot of people go to ICU and then come out. And that's the whole point of ICU is to help people. But remember, there is no cure. So they just have to treat his symptoms, try to bring his fever down or whatever else he's dealing with so that he could survive the day and survive this and get back on his feet. He's 55 years old, which is good news because that's relatively young for this disease. And so that's why people weren't overly concerned when he first said he tested positive. Well, he's young enough that he should be okay. But by the way, should be okay, as we've seen many times here, doesn't necessarily mean definitely okay. And even if it's a small percentage of people under the age of 70 that die, it is still some percentage. And so now my point is we're more worried, okay? And then they say this, they say, the Prime Minister has asked Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab, who is the first Secretary of State to deputize for him where necessary. Okay, so what does that mean? That means, and they also mentioned, this is very important, don't worry, the prime minister is still conscious. No, that leads me to worry. Okay, I mean, when you tell people, no, he's doing fine, he's still conscious, that's not a good sign. Okay, so when they were talking about tea and crumpets going in, like, oh, I do declare just going into a hospital just to be tea and crumpets, I was like, that's not true. Okay, good intentions on why you were saying that, but it's not true. Now they say ICU, he's okay, he's still conscious. Not good news. Okay, that's my job as a news analyst to tell you what the reality is. So obviously we hope he's okay. And if they have to put him on a ventilator or they have to do other procedures where he's no longer conscious, they must have a backup. That's why they're going through this process. It's right to go through that process. They're not doing anything wrong. In fact, they're doing things right. But I guess the only point I'll make as a not a critique of how they're handling it, but for whatever it's worth, which is very little, advice, like, don't worry about the optics anymore. The guy's in trouble. Okay, I don't agree with him politically. That doesn't mean anything in this case. He's in trouble health-wise. You got to help him. So put optics aside. Don't worry about whether he's conscious or unconscious, etc. Get your first Secretary of State in order, and you have. Go treat the guy. Don't worry about whether he's conscious or not. You got to go treat him now to the best of our abilities. Again, no cure, no vaccine. They're doing the best they can, but you got to be super careful. Worst case scenario is, I mean, look, he got into this mess because of optics. He meant well, but he, Lady Di had shaken hands with people who had AIDS, and that was a big moment. So he went, and people are like, oh, gee, I wonder how he got it. This is my earlier video on it. By the way, you can get all of our videos if you're a member anytime you want, tyt.com/join. You're watching on YouTube, there's a join button down below. The top level gets you all of our videos. And it's important, of course, for us to stay healthy in these times too. Okay, so, but when in that first video, look, they were like wondering, oh, I wonder why he got it. And they gave all these different things, and he was less than 6 feet apart from this person. No, he went to a hospital and shook hands with people who have coronavirus. No, this isn't AIDS. AIDS is relatively very hard to transfer. You have to have exchange of bodily fluids, etc. Coronavirus is wildly contagious. You shaking hands with people, don't do that. Don't do that if they have coronavirus. Don't go anywhere near that. Anyway, if those reports are accurate, very, very likely that's why he got it. My point is that was not very careful. Going forward, you should be super careful because it appears that he is in significant danger. So we wish Boris Johnson well, and that's what you do in times of crisis like this. So in our country, politics is near impossible to put aside because we have a guy trying to lead a 3-ring circus when we need a leader of a country, and he makes everything worse. And in order to address the crisis, we must critique him so that he'll turn around and do at least a quarter of things right, because lives are on the line. I don't know all the details of how the UK government has been handling it, but in other places where you don't have an absolute buffoon in charge, you just have political differences, by all means, rally together, do the best you can in getting through this crisis, especially when someone like this is sick. So get well soon and be super careful. Everybody stay safe.